So this is the first in our shared future conversations, looking at the kind of relationships that we need to have, Brexit and beyond. And so I wanted today just to talk to some of the MEPs who attended the Shared Future event that I hosted last week, the Brexit hearing. And so I have with me Frances Fitzgerald, MEP from Ireland, and I have with me Theresa Griffin, MEP from England. And hopefully we're going to find out a little bit about each of them, maybe a little bit about me as well, and just have a bit of an informal conversation about our role. So we're both new MEPs. You're not new.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. I don't know how long we'll be here, but anyway, you're not a new MEP, but you're not new to politics either, Frances. I started in politics. I was a city councillor. I was Lord Mayor of Belfast. Then I was an assembly member, an MP. Now I've been an MEP, so I'm kind of collecting titles as I go. But you've had quite a few titles yourself. So how did you start out in politics, and why did you end up here?
Well, I started out in politics after I was chair of the National Women's Council, and I really enjoyed that work. Equality has always driven me in terms of my political values, and I was a social worker as well for 20 years. And then I got involved in lobbying for women with the Irish government at the time, and that led to me running for politics. So I was a TD and a senator for over 20 years, and I was a minister for 7 years. And I've always been very pro-European. In fact, I always felt hugely motivated by what I saw happening in Europe. And so in the last European elections, I ran for Dublin and was elected by the citizens of Dublin. I'm very proud to be the representative of Dublin City and County now.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously your previous, you said about being a social worker and so on, my background was a bit more different. My background wasn't in social sciences or politics, it was in engineering, which is a little bit more unusual. But you've been here for a while, Tracy. This is your second term, isn't that right?
It is, yes.
And how are you finding it as a kind of, from your perspective, a different term, a lot of new MEPs? How are you finding the atmosphere and how things are going this time?
What's very encouraging is that every day on my way to the office, somebody from another delegation will say, "Please stay, we want you to remain." And then after every committee meeting, I come out and somebody from another delegation will say, "What's happening?" And I have to say, we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one journey in March where I was going back to my constituency, because obviously we're in the Parliament Monday to Thursday and back in our constituencies Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where the situation actually changed 3 times. Yeah. The uncertainty for the economy of my region is desperate. I met with the BMA today. A hard Brexit would be a disaster for the NHS in the UK. We are losing thousands of jobs already, and I have to hope that sense is seen and we actually go back to the people with a second vote.
Yeah, well, I mean, that obviously is my hope as well, and like most people recognise that Northern Ireland will be the most affected region, not
Absolutely.
just in terms of the economy, which is very vulnerable to any changes with Brexit, but also I think just in terms of the Good Friday Agreement and the political dispensation, which has taken a long time to get as far as it has.
Absolutely.
Still very fragile, as we know, because we haven't even had an assembly now for the last 3 years. But we find ourselves in this kind of tug of war between kind of Ireland and GB as we kind of pull apart, and that's very difficult when we're in a region where both of those identities really mean something to people. And so we've kind of found with the Brexit process that Northern Ireland, having been kind of invisible as a question during the debate, has kind of risen up the agenda slowly but surely over recent weeks and months. I guess in Ireland, people recognised from the outset that Brexit was going to be difficult in terms of the island of Ireland and in terms of Northern Ireland. But why do you think it's so important that it's recognised here, but also in London, how important that is?
Well, it is amazing that it, as you say, it's top of the agenda now, but seemed to be ignored during the referendum. And I think that is really one of the reasons we're in this situation, that people just didn't think it through enough, the impact on different parts of the island of Ireland and the north, south, east, west relationships. And it's so important because you look at the history, of violence, you look at the price that so many people paid, you know, families, not just the deaths, the injuries, the quality of life. And I was very struck, Naomi, during your Brexit conference, and well done on it, when, you know, you invited people who are involved with NGOs who cross the border every day of the week for their job, who are worried about their children, worried about the threat of violence, and how, you know, we really need to get back to putting citizens at the centre and thinking about the impact that Brexit is going to have on ordinary lives day in, day out. And I think that gets lost in the sound bites, and we really need to get back to it. And it's so important because we needed a Good Friday Agreement to take us forward. And the threat of that being lost is so severe after all the effort.
Absolutely.
And Theresa, obviously, I mean, you have personal connections with Ireland, but also your constituency has a massive kind of Irish population. So do you find that people understand the challenges for us, or do you think that maybe it's something that people really don't understand how Northern Ireland works or don't understand our politics?
I think it varies, if I'm honest. And just to pick up on your point, the day after the referendum, I started to talk about the implications for Ireland. You know, I have family in Derry and Donegal, and we pushed press release after press release out. And actually, the only real coverage we got was Radio Foyle. I wasn't getting coverage within my own region, and as you say, we have very large Irish populations in Liverpool and Manchester and Lancashire, but the bonds, as you were saying, they're not just economic, they're cultural.
Yes.
And that really, the fact that we have to have hope and aspiration for all of our young people. And again, congratulations on your hearing, because listening to those young people who've never known anything but peace, talking about their fear for the future, surely peace and stability in Northern Ireland has got to be, and the island of Ireland, has got to be a top priority. I had the privilege of working with politicians just after the Good Friday Agreement when I was Chair of Economic Development for Liverpool. We can't go back to those days when decisions would be made about Northern Ireland by a minister coming from the UK once a month on a Thursday. It can't happen.
I thought one of the most disturbing things I heard at your seminar, Naomi, was people saying, quotes, Brexit is already happening. And what they meant by that is that the uncertainty that's there now is influencing decisions about where do I go to college, you know, where will I work, where's this going to go to? And that's very disturbing.
Yeah, and businesses are making choices every day about expansion, whether or not to go ahead, whether they're going to locate their business north or south of the border, what the implications of that are going to be. And we see that being rolled out. So people's everyday lives are already being impacted by the changes.
As they say, there's no such thing as a good Brexit. It's all bad. It's just varying degrees. You're just trying to manage what is a decision that really is not good for anyone, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the concerns that I've had too is, and I mean, we look at the detail of Brexit, and I'm going to come on to that in a second, but one of the things that concerns me is the big picture, because really between, I guess, well, I suppose going back to Albert Reynolds and John Major, and then right through the kind of whole process, and we had John Bruton there last week, we had this sense that that London and Dublin were on the same page and were starting to work together and come together. And that seems to be being kind of pulled apart. There doesn't seem to be the kind of respect for that relationship that there used to be, particularly, I would say, in terms of London not respecting the fact that this is an important relationship. And it's one of those concerns that I have, because I think that when the two kind of main governments are not at ease with each other, that has real ramifications in terms of community relations.
Brexit is very challenging for the relationship. There's no doubt about that. And when you think of, it's only a few years ago, you know, the Queen was visiting Ireland, the President was visiting the UK. Everybody was saying how brilliant the relationship is, and the kind of fractures around Brexit. I mean, obviously, whatever the outcome, we want to continue having a good relationship with the UK. I mean, that's the reality. But at the same time, it's so uncertain at present, so dramatic, so changing, and so uncertain that it's